I'm reading from Genesis 37, 1-4, and 12 to 28. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brother, the son of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. His father's wives and he brought their father a bad report about him. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any other, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off to the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flock?" "They have moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his life, what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of the robe, the richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty, there was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt.
And our gospel reading comes from Matthew, the 14th chapter. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After Jesus dismissed him, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the wind and the waves. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost!" They cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "If it is you," Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," Jesus said, "why do you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Here ends the gospel reading. So, a priest, a rabbi, and a minister were out one day fishing on a lake. The serene beauty of the mountains and the pine trees, they were enjoying their day. And then the rabbi said, "Oh no, I forgot my best fishing lure in the truck." So the rabbi stands up, steps onto the water, and walks across the lake. To this, the priest was amazed. Wow, I never thought that my friend was that holy to do such a thing. A little while later on, the minister, he said, "Oh no, I forgot my lunch back on shore." So the minister stands up, steps onto the water, and then walks across the lake, gets his lunch, and then comes back and sits back down in the boat. The priest, dumbfounded, said, "How can both of them be that holy? I'm just as holy as the priest or the minister, the rabbi or the minister. How could they do such things?" And then the priest, after thinking a while, says, "Hey, I forgot something back on shore as well." So he stands up, steps onto the water, and sinks with a splash. The minister turns to the rabbi and says, "Do you think we should have told him where the rocks are?" Ever get that sinking feeling? That feeling that you're in trouble, that things are not good, that there is an uncertain future ahead, that all in life seems to be where you're stuck in a deep pit. We all get that feeling from one time or another. It happens in life. Things are not going well, and times leave you uncertain. Or there are circumstances in your life where you are under the greatest threat. Today we see two men who are in trouble. First we have Joseph, who is seized by his brothers and then thrown into a cistern. They are scheming to kill Joseph, but then they decide to sell him to some Ishmaelite traders. And so Joseph gets sold to them, sold into slavery, off to go to a distant land that he does not know. Next we see Peter, a man who, when he sees Jesus walking on water, is bold enough to make that request. "Jesus, if you tell me to come to you on the water." And he gets out of the boat, but then he's frightened by the wind. And so Peter sinks. Now, from both these men, we can learn lessons, not just about their situations, but on how to trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord when we face these times where we feel we are sunk, where we seem to be in a deep, dark pit, where we think we're done. Today, we look at very important lessons, the most important of which is have confidence in God. Have confidence in God to be there for you when you face those times, where you're stuck in those pits, where you feel that you are sunk, when you feel that your future is uncertain. You can trust in the Lord. for he is with you. He is with you no matter what you face, just like Joseph and Peter. Now, in the Old Testament reading, Joseph, of course, is in trouble. And he's in trouble for quite some time because he's sold into slavery, shipped off to a foreign land with people speaking a language he doesn't know, with customs and cultures he doesn't know. But Joseph, he trusted in God. He trusted in God to be with him during that whole time. And we read about this, how because he trusted in God, he prospered even though he was a slave in Egypt. I'm going to read now chapter 29 of Genesis, verses 2 through 6, and hear how he was blessed because he trusted in the Lord. The Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw the Lord was with him, and the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his whole household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From that time on, he put Joseph in charge of his whole household and all that he owned. The Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in house and in field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. God was with Joseph, and so he was blessed. And so even the household he was in was blessed. Joseph trusted in the Lord in this bad situation he was in life. Now, of course, if you're familiar with the story of Joseph, we might think at first that he wasn't really one to truly trust in the Lord, because as we read Genesis, we see there is a bit of arrogance to Joseph. And, of course, that's part of the reasons his brothers hate him. There's, of course, his brothers don't hate him without any cause. I mean, of course, they do have their own causes. They do have their own ideas that are quite despicable. But Joseph was arrogant. He was also somebody who was loved more by his father than, say, his brothers, which, of course, helped with the jealousy and caused all kinds of problems. Now, Joseph, even in his kind of self-overconfidence that he had, he still trusted in God. Even though he was the pampered son, even though he was the favorite, even though he had grand ideas about himself compared to his brothers, he still trusted in God. He looked to the Lord in his circumstance. He looked to the Lord to prosper, even though he was in an alien land with alien people who were so different from him and a life that he knew, living with his family. Joseph looked to the Lord, and so he prospered. He prospered and trusted in the Lord. Now, we can do that in our lives, always. Always trust in the Lord when we face those uncertainties, face those times where we don't know what's going to happen, face those times where everything seems so alien, so very different from what we've known our entire lives. The good news is, the Lord is with you, just as the Lord was with Joseph. He is there for you to always look to him in this life. In 1996, a Marine by the name of Joey Moore was standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier, and he fell overboard into the sea. For a time, he wasn't even known that he was missing. And then there was a search that went out for him. But they stopped the search because they thought after 60 hours, a man who had gone overboard without a life vest, there's no way he could survive. nearly 72 hours after he fell to death of that aircraft carrier. He was found by 4 Pakistani fishermen. His tongue was dry and cracked. He was delirious. You see, Joey had used his trousers, or survival skill, and inflated them and used them as a flotation device. He is treading water in his sleep. He's doing everything to survive. Surviving a situation that people thought was impossible. Later, when he was interviewed on Dateline NBC, 2 years after the experience, the host, Stone Phillips, asked him how'd he do it? How'd he survive that long? And his answer, God. God gave him the will to survive, to keep moving forward. He trusted in God to be there, to give him that strength. Trusting God to give you strength when you face the most dire circumstances. Cling to the Lord, even when it goes against all worldly logic. Cling to him to rescue and bless you. He is there to reach out to you, just as Jesus did for Peter. There's a lot of interesting details about Jesus walking on water. Of course, Jesus, he's far away from the disciples from when the time that he starts walking across the Sea of Galilee. It's nighttime, and it's very windy. It's not this nice glass smooth sea you can imagine Jesus walking on. The disciples, they see Jesus and they're frightened. They think it's a ghost, which makes sense because all of a sudden somebody just walking across the water. What else to think? And of course, the miracle walking on water, that's nothing else like it is found in Scripture. So the disciples wouldn't even understand. They won't understand until they realized it was Jesus. Now Jesus, when he approaches them, he calms the fears of the disciples. He calms the fears and says, "It's me." Peter, he is bold and says, "If it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Peter, he steps out of the boat. I want you to think about the faith, the confidence that Peter had that Jesus would be able to give him the ability to walk on water. That a miracle, unlike anything, because remember, Peter's a fisherman. He's been on water his entire life. He knows what happens when you step on water. But Peter, he trusted in Jesus. Trusted to walk. Trusted to do the impossible because Jesus was there to give him that power. It took much faith for that request of Jesus to request that. And, of course, step out of the boat. But Peter, of course, as he's walking, he sees the wind and becomes afraid. And so sinks. And he cries out, "Save me, Lord." That's a reality of faith. We can go from that extreme of having that great confidence to no confidence at all. Peter, he had such faith to even ask Jesus, "Jesus, let me do the impossible as what I see you're doing right now." But then Peter, he got frightened by something he saw all the time. The wind on the sea and the big waves that come with it. That can happen. Those doubts and fears come into our lives. Those doubts and fears stop us from understanding that power of Jesus is right before us. It's right in front of our eyes and can make us do wonderful and amazing things. Doubts can come. And that's a reality in our lives. We must always look to the Lord. Look to the Lord and trust that he is there to reach out to us. Just as Jesus immediately went and reached his hand out to Peter and lifted him up. He is there for you in your life. When you feel you are stuck in a deep pit, like Joseph, he is there. How many of you have ever been stuck in a hole? Well, I have, on multiple occasions, because that was part of my profession in excavating. You see, we dig holes for these big underground tanks, some like as big as, say, to hold 25,000 or 2,500 gallons. And of course, you can imagine these big tanks. Well, they're pretty deep holes. So, of course, the hole had to be dug. And then somebody had to go to the bottom of that hole and make it level. Make it level so the tank would sit perfectly. Now, since I was often the younger guy on the crew, I was the one who did that a lot. So I was rather used to being down in the hole and then being there, surrounded by these walls of earth, only able to look at the sky because there's no way I could get out. But see, the thing is, I always knew I would get out. A hand would come up from above, or a backhoe bucket would descend down into the hole, and then I'd get on and ride that right up. The Lord is there when you feel you are stuck in a pit. The Lord is there when you are frightened and you're not sure how to move ahead. When you find yourself in those uncertain times, those times that seem so alien and scary. He is there, just as he was there for Peter, and he was there for Joseph. The Lord is with you. Rejoice in that truth. Rejoice in him who is always there, reaching his hand out to you. Amen.